Thank you.
Okay, very good. Why don't we start out, Mr. Satterfield, Mr. Erickson? Facebook and Google both collect data about consumers to enable targeted advertising, which is the principal way I believe your companies make money. How important is consumer data to each of your companies? You can start, Mr. Satterfield.
Thank you, Chairwoman Klobuchar. The way that we look at it is success comes from building great products, not from how much data you have.
Okay, but if you could just straightforward answer the question, how important is consumer data to your company in your profit model?
Data is important, to connect people to relevant experiences. That includes showing them relevant ads. But again, I'd say that, the success we've had has come through building great experiences and not from the amount of data that we collect.
Mr. Erickson, how do you answer that for Google?
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for the question. At Google, we provide a means for people to find relevant information and helpful information on the internet. And to do that, we have to understand what they're looking for. But anyone can use our products for free without providing or storing any personally identifiable information with us. We provide transparent mechanisms for users to understand how their data is being collected and how their data is being used, and meaningful tools to give consumers the ability to see the data that is stored in their account and to make choices like delete the data or use one of our auto delete tools to set up regular cadences where information such as their search history or viewing history or location history, if they've opted into location history, can be regularly deleted. We've also, as I mentioned in my testimony, since 2011, have created tools to give consumers the ability to take the data that they've provided to us and move it to a competitor site. We don't want users to work to engage with Google because they feel locked in because their data is with us. We want them to be able to go to the services and the technologies that suit their needs based on a competitive dynamic rather than any sense of lock-in.
Okay. Why don't we go to you, Ms. Slayman? I was just looking at some Twitter feed. Someone just reported that they were talking with a few friends on one of the sites, going back and forth online about being a female politician a while back, including a TV makeup artist for some reason. And this person said they referred to me as inimitable online. And within an hour, they got an online ad for Chanel Inimitable Mascara, linking the TV makeup artist comment with their adjective. So is that possible? I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm just saying this is what's happened to me. And how important is the data to these companies? They've kind of gave roundabout answers here. And what does it mean for other platforms trying to compete if they don't have the data?
So I think the data is very important. I appreciate what the other witnesses have said, that there is also a role played by their innovative engineers. I think that's absolutely right. But the data is important, and that's why we're concerned about whether it's being treated competitively or not. I think the relevant ads are not always what is best for us. It's what's best for the platform. And sometimes that lines up with what's best for us, and sometimes it doesn't. So we need to make sure that we have protections for users and for the competitive marketplace when we're looking at that problem.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Satterfield, along the same lines, last quarter, Facebook publicly reported that its advertising revenue per users in the U.S. and Canada was $51.58. I want to ask you a few questions about that. The comparable number for Europe was only $17.08. In Asia, it's $4.13. And the rest of the world, you reported advertising revenue per user of about $3. Why is the value of a user in the U.S. worth so much more than the rest of the world, especially when we're comparing ourselves to comparable countries in Europe?
Senator, I think there are a lot of factors that go into those average revenue per user numbers.
Okay. That's not really an answer though, man. That's the beginning of an answer.
Senator,
So
what we're doing is we're breaking down revenue per region according to the number of folks that we serve in those regions. That's what's reflected in the numbers that you're describing.
Okay, why don't we go to you, Mr. Rob? Do you think Facebook should pay all of its U.S. users $51.58 for Facebook's use of their data, which that we now know it's in their recent fiscal report? Maybe the individual profit centers, which is all of us, should actually get the money back.
Well, if you own the data, you would at least be able to compare offers and get paid for its usage. I don't think you'd get the full amount, obviously.
Right.
But
maybe there'd be a discount, but you could get a good chunk of it, just like you do when you, when you're a consumer and you go and buy something or you sell something is probably the better example.
That's correct.
Mr. Rob, when companies collect data about us and either sell it or use it to target us with ads, we aren't just the consumer or the user anymore. And we really have to start thinking about this, because I think when we get on these platforms, we, can have fun, people do business, but they don't realize every single second they're on there, they are creating profits, but they are not reaping the benefit. We are, in fact, our data is a commodity. But consumers, as I note, aren't getting enough in return. And I've discussed the idea of somehow putting a tax on the data for these companies to pay. You have written about paying people for their data. In your opinion, what is the strongest argument for ensuring that the tech companies have to pay for the consumer data that they collect and use? And if Facebook and Google had to pay for using consumer data, how do you think their behavior would change?
Okay, the most compelling argument is that it would change the perspective people have on data. If they were if they had ownership rights over it, by unlocking it through ownership, you don't just limit the data to what that Facebook collects or Google collects to what they can do with it. You then open it up to what all of these other companies can actually do with it, and they can generate revenue. People in control of their data, people who have ownership of their data, they will be more willing to give more. And if they can set permissions on in terms of how it's used, they'll feel comfortable with it. They'll feel like they're participating in the economy, rather than being observers or being treated as resources. It's a complete phase shift. It's not even comparable to what we have now.
Okay. And I thought it was just so interesting. I'll go back to you, Mr. Erickson, Mr. Satterfield, my last questions here. I just thought it was interesting when Apple unleashed the power of allowing people to opt out, that 75% did that, because I think it's partly because they did it in a pretty straightforward way. Because I know I try to do it sometimes, and then I on some site and I don't know if I've opted out, and it's really complicated for people, or they make me opt in to try to do something and I can't figure it out, and you're just trying to order something online. Mr. Erickson, you've spoken about putting consumers' privacy preference first and giving them the ability to change what is collected and used about them. And I understand how you think that protects user privacy. But from a competition policy perspective, it seems like we look beyond what benefits an individual user. Even if millions of consumers give you permission to collect and use their data, shouldn't we be concerned about the competitive impact of your exclusive access to their data, which you use to compete with companies that don't have that data? Do you want to answer that, Mr. Erickson, first?
Sure. Thank you, Senator, for the question. At Google, we do want to make sure that consumers first understand how their data is being collected and how their data is being used. And we do want to give them meaningful choice about their use of their data. Unlike Facebook, a user can use Google services for free. They do not need to establish an account or provide any personally identifiable information to Google. We never sell personally identifiable information about our users, even when they do sign in. And they can delete that information at any time. Most users, when they're using online services, are providing similar information, if not the same information, to multiple online services. So in that regard, the data is really non-rivalrous from a competition standpoint. It's easily gotten by other companies that want to purchase data from, for instance, data brokers or other entities. But I think the key here for us is to put users in a position where they have meaningful choices and meaningful control about the use of their particular data.
Okay, do you want to take a crack at that one, Mr. Satterfield, from Facebook's perspective?
Yes, thank you. And just to be clear, Facebook services are also free. But to your question, Chairwoman Klobuchar, the statistics are so interesting right now. The average user has something like 46 apps that they're using every month. There's more than 100 apps on the average person's phone. People are sharing more data in more places than they ever have been before. So we think that there's a lot of data out there that's being used for innovative purposes, including to show people ads.
You think they all know that they're sharing their data on all those apps?
Well, Senator, we hope so. I mean, we think transparency and control, those are core values of ours. We think that they should be core values of other companies as well.
If you could answer it though, do you think that they know they're sharing that data? Do you think they all know that?
I mean, on Facebook, Madam Chairwoman, they do. I'm confident of that. These are core values of ours. We invest a lot in providing transparency and control. I think with respect to other companies, this is an area where Congress could intervene, make sure they do. Transparency and control could be core components of a federal privacy legislation.
Okay, I'm going to just ask just one follow-up because I really want to turn over from Ms. Slayman. Do you think that's true, that they all know this? Do you think we need, and by the way, the companies are now coming to us saying they want privacy legislation after opposing it, various iterations of it after all the states have started to get into the act, which is kind of a pattern we've seen in other areas here. But do you want to respond to this quickly? And then I should let Senator Lee ask some questions.
Yes, I'm sure there are many users who do not know that they are sharing the data. I also think even if they know about the data that they're sharing, it's quite complicated to understand what that data can be used for. That data can be used to figure out additional information about you. So a user may be making a decision to share some data, not realizing what that data actually could tell a company about who they are and their preferences. I also think I want to respond to the point that Mr. Erickson made about Google doesn't sell your data. I think it's important to keep in mind that Google has within them the capacity to fully exploit your data without ever selling it because they have the advertising system. So within this one large vertically integrated company, they can both collect the data and fully exploit it to advertise to you. So the necessity for selling isn't there, and they can still be exploiting it just as effectively.
Okay,